Whenever you're ready, Angie.
Okay, thank you, Dan. Thanks so much. My name is Angie Armbrust. I'm here with my colleague Natalie Cook. And as Dan said, we are NASW-PA's contract lobbyists. We're employed by a company called McNeese GR, located in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. And we represent your interests here to state government in Pennsylvania. So welcome to this year's Lunch and Learn. We're excited to talk. This is kind of an Advocacy 101 and a little bit of civics as a reminder, because maybe it's been a while since we all had a class on it. So this is just be a comprehensive what Pennsylvania state government is like and why it's important to advocate for your profession and how to do so. So go ahead, next slide. So a little bit about, like I said, our work with NASW-PA. We are your eyes and ears here in Harrisburg, watching everything that the state government and all the state agencies do. We help your leadership, including your executive director and your board of directors, to advocate to the legislature on bills like House Bill 554 and Senate Bill 583, the social work licensure compact model bill, and a whole host of other legislative issues of interest. We work with your leadership to raise the profile of NASW-PA to leaders in Pennsylvania state government. That happens through events like LEAD, which is happening next Tuesday, events like District Days, which we've done the past couple years, and just through ongoing meetings with key decision makers all the time. We're kind of introducing your leaders to legislators who are interested in introducing legislation on things like student loan forgiveness, student stipends, access to care issues, raising the minimum wage, all those sorts of things that fall under your legislative agenda. When we see legislators introducing things, bills on those topics, we're making connections to them. And then education and training. We partner with your leadership and your staff to train social workers like yourselves to be skilled advocates for when you come to Harrisburg or when you engage with legislators in your own community. Ongoing education is really important in the legislative process. We have to constantly work to inform state leaders and policymakers about not just the impact that all of you have to their constituents, but also what you need. So that's kind of in a nutshell, all the work that we're doing to make sure that NASW is well represented to state government. Next slide. So state government structure here in Pennsylvania, we have, oh, we're missing an E there on an executive, but our executive, Governor Josh Shapiro, the legislative branch, which is made up of our House and Senate, and the judicial. So just quick snapshots of what those look like. Next slide. So the executive, spelled correctly this time. Pennsylvania's governor is Josh Shapiro. He is a Democrat from Montgomery County, Pennsylvania. He is in the 4th year of his first 4-year term. He can run for 2. He is running for re-election this year. The governor is sort of the head of the administration with a capital A in state government. So the administration is made up of all the different state agencies that fall under his jurisdiction. Some of the state agencies that are particularly important to NASW, to you and the people that you serve, would be the Secretary of Health, the Health Department, the Human Services Department, and then the Department of State. Department of State is a tricky one because maybe some people, you hear in the news about how Department of State runs elections. That is true. But also in Pennsylvania, the Department of State runs all the licensing boards. So your State Board of Social Work license comes from the Department of State here in PA. Next slide.
So here we have our legislative branch. Pennsylvania's legislative branch is comprised of the House and the Senate, and together they make up the General Assembly. We have 253 members total between both of those chambers. There are 203 House members and 50 senators. Our breakdown by party in the House is we have 102 Democrats to 100 Republicans. It's a very slim margin. There is 1 vacancy And we have 4 legislators who have just been elected through special elections, and they have not yet been sworn in yet. So they will be sworn in next week, I believe. So that will bring them back up to these totals, and those seats will be filled, and then there will be that one empty seat. But as you can see, with a slim majority, it does sometimes make getting legislation passed or moving things forward in general a little bit more difficult. There has to be a lot more cooperative work between the parties in order to advance legislation when your margins are that thin. No one has a majority or a supermajority, so you sometimes need votes across the aisle to move things forward. So you see less legislation moving in sessions like this, where we have a very narrow split between the parties. In the Senate, that breakdown's more Republican leaning, and always has been for a very long time. We have 27 Republicans to 23 Democrats. The Pennsylvania Senate, this is a little bit of how it works. They have half of the state Senate is up for reelection every 2 years. So every 2-year session cycle, half of the Senate, so 25 of them, come up for reelection. They serve 4-year terms. So there's 4 years, and then on the off years, it's the evens and odds. In 2026, we have only the even numbered districts are up for reelection. So when you go to vote this year, if you're in an odd numbered district and don't see your person there up in the primary or the general, it's because they're not up for reelection this term. Senator Kim Ward, she is the Senate President pro temp. She is the first woman president of the Senate, and she is from Westmoreland County, so the western part of Pennsylvania. Lieutenant Governor Austin Davis, he's the presiding officer. He oversees session, and he is from Allegheny County, also western portion of the state. Senator Joe Pittman, he's the majority leader for Republicans. He covers Armstrong, Indiana, Jefferson, and part of Westmoreland counties, again, western Pennsylvania. And Senator Jay Costa is the Democratic leader from Allegheny County. So interesting, you can see very left leaning on, or very left part of the state, western part of the state, left and right on a map for me. That the western half of the state is very, the Senate is made up of those western legislators. You'll often hear sometimes them talk about like the Philly component and the Philly legislators, but the Senate has a Pittsburgh stronghold representing them. So I always find that to be interesting. And then the Pennsylvania House, all 203 members come up for re-election every 2 years. So every 2-year session cycle, we are in the second year of a 2-year session cycle. So this year, you'll see every House member come up for re-election, first in the primary and then in the general. Representative Joanna McClinton is from Philadelphia. She's the Speaker of the House, represents Philadelphia and Delaware counties. First Black woman to preside over the Pennsylvania House. So we are in a historic moment with Representative McClinton and Senator Ward being women presiding over these 2 chambers. Rep. Matt Bradford from Montgomery County, he is the majority leader in the House. And then Representative Jesse Topper, he's the minority leader in the House. So you can see a little bit on this side, we have more of that eastern side of the state, little bit more leading on the House side. The legislative process. This is just a brief overview of how this works, how the actual bill becomes a law. In this example, we have a Senate bill. So a bill, you would find a prime sponsor for your topic, your issue, the bill you want to introduce. They circulate a co-sponsor memo that talks about what the bill is and why people should sign on and support it. And then when it gets formally introduced, it starts on the Senate side. It gets referred to a committee. For the purposes of today, if we're talking about a licensing issue or something to do with social work, would generally go to the professional licensure committee. And then once it's in committee, it has to be brought up for a vote. Sometimes there's an informational hearing or a public hearing on a bill. And then it comes up for a voting meeting and gets voted out of committee. And it goes back to the Senate floor. where it gets first consideration, second consideration, and third consideration before it can come up for a final vote. In that process, it can also be amended, and it also has to be referred back to the Senate Appropriations Committee to determine if there's a fiscal note that needs to be attached. So is it going to cost the state money? Bills can get hung up there if there's a big fiscal component to it. So once it goes through first, second, generally back to appropriations, and then back to the Senate floor for a final vote. The bill then goes to the House, goes through the same process before it would go to the governor's desk. The only difference there, and this happens in both chambers, whether it starts in the House or the Senate, if the other chamber also amends the bill, it has to go back to where it started for that chamber to agree basically on those amendments. So if it started in the Senate, went through the Senate, got to the House, House decides to change something, then it has to go back to the Senate, and the Senate has to vote again to agree to those changes, and then it goes to the governor's desk. And then the governor has options. He can sign a bill and it goes into effect on its effective date that's laid out. He can do nothing, and then it becomes a law in 10 days. He can line item veto a bill, take parts out, or he can veto it. So he's used several of those options over the years. Some of them are to make statements about things he doesn't agree with in budget bills. Some are, straight vetoes. But a lot of them, most of them he signs and they become a law.
So as Natalie said, we are in the middle of the 2025-2026 legislative session. So that 2-year session kicked off on the first Tuesday in January of last year. But we have to kind of look a little bit back before that to the November 2024 election that kind of set up who got elected to be in Harrisburg for 2025 and 26. The results were kind of a lot of status quo. The Senate stayed head count wise exactly the same split between D's and R's. One D seat flipped to an R, one R seat flipped D. So that 27 to 23 breakdown remained the same. House also kept its status quo. It had, 102 to 101, the Democratic control. Every incumbent won. Every open seat, the last election stayed the same party. So what did that show us? It kind of, I'll talk again about what that showed us, but all the row offices, so that's like treasurer, auditor general, attorney general, et cetera, those all flipped to Republicans, but that's not as impactful on legislative activity. Governor Shapiro kind of, although he was not himself on the ballot in 2024, he kind of emerged unscathed. He was seen as a strong supporter for D's. He still gets to make his claim that he's one of the only governors with divided government, which helps build his narrative about bipartisanship and how he, works across the aisle to get things done. And he continues to kind of climb that ladder as one of a small number of contenders for a likely higher office someday here, perhaps nationally. So what did that tell us? Kind of what were the outcomes of that election heading into this session? Kind of the same, but different. The House D had flipped the chamber the 2 years prior, or yes, 2 years. So 2022, this election showed that was absolutely not a fluke, that the Democrats were able to hold that even one vote slim majority, they were still able to keep it. It led to whole new leadership for the House Republican caucus. They elected a new slate of leaders who I think are doing a good job this session of keeping their party right up there involved in things. We had some House rules changes and some new committees made. Some of the rule changes included, because that majority is so close, because it's really just that one vote difference, House Republican leaders were able to advocate for bigger representation on committees. So, little tweaks to changes to rules, but it really did show that, this new era of we're working in a very slim majority, we have to work across party lines. Having said that, year one of this session did see a very long extended battle over the general fund budget. Some of you probably recall from last year. I think it was a 4-month long holdout till it was actually wrapped up and finished. So next slide leads us into year two of this 2-year session. This is a major election year, as Natalie noted. The governor, the whole House, half of the Senate, all up for election this November. The governor kicked off earlier this year, gave his budget address on February 3rd. Last year's budget, when it was finally settled, actually was pretty close to the prior year's budget. So no big new revenue generators, no big spending cuts either. So there was some speculation, maybe after that deal, maybe we would just kind of lead into another sort of status quo budget. No, there was a proposal for a 5.4% increase in spending. Again, advocating for new revenue from skills game and recreational marijuana regulation. In the response to that, Senate Republicans kind of focused on addressing the projected budget deficit that the state's numbers show in the next like 18-ish months that's kind of looming. They're emphasizing restraint on spending growth. They want to identify cost reductions, and they want to pursue policies that they think will lead to long-term economic growth. House Ds are focused on increasing public education and public transit funding. They argue that their recent court rulings and service demands really require a sustained investment in both of those things. And they, again, point, as the governor does, point to recreational marijuana legalization and still skills game taxation and regulation as possible ways to pay for that. So that leads us to where are we going to end up on June 30th, our budget deadline. Will it be on time? Will it be slightly past then, maybe July 4th, maybe that next week? Will there be a prolonged holdout? We don't know. That's one of the more exciting / nerve-wracking parts of this job, is just seeing how that plays out each year. It is a major election year, as we said, so perhaps everybody will come to an agreement earlier so people can get home to their districts to be doing their work there over the summer and gearing up for the fall campaigns, but stay tuned. And then we like to just kind of highlight as we talk about issues that are important to your profession, and as it's important to advocate for your profession and the issues if you're coming to lead next week, the bills that we're highlighting then. But also it's important to know your place in the broader, environment of what's happening in Pennsylvania state government. So what are those hot button issues that are taking up a lot of press, a lot of time, a lot of attention, things like energy prices, data centers, the budget, the possible legalization of recreational marijuana, the possible regulation of skills games. And there's a lot of uncertainty around federal funding at the moment too, in not just, Medicaid, not just SNAP, departments like transportation, lots of different departments here in Pennsylvania are facing some either additional hoops they have to jump through for federal funding to be paid out, or delays in federal funding that had been promised, or new requirements being layered on top of. So just a lot of unexpected and uncertain times around federal funding. I see a quick question in the chat. If you don't, I'll answer real quick. It says, what does skills games refer to? And I can drop an article in the chat while Natalie's speaking, but just really quickly, those are what look like slot machines, what look like a video game terminal that you'll see in like a gas station or restaurant or other establishment, where you can play and win prizes, win money. If they're not inside of a casino or other regulated establishment, those are currently unregulated machines where the state gets no tax revenue from those.
Yeah, you'll see them in weird places, fast food restaurants, convenience stores, not just bars or restaurants. So. All right, state government advocacy. Why should you advocate for your profession? Professional advocacy gives you the opportunity to have a stake in what's expected of you as professionals. If you are not speaking up about your profession, they being the legislature, staff included, don't always understand what the decisions they're making or how the decisions they're making are going to impact how you do your job, where you're able to practice, everything from telemedicine to your license, regulations that get written. It's an important role if you have the capacity to do it. And it can look like many different things. The roles that you can play, you can participate in events like LEAD, written communication, emails, letters, social media. You could write an op-ed. So I think sometimes when we think about advocacy, we tend to think, oh, I have to show up to this event. I have to schedule a meeting with my legislator. Sure, those are bigger picture, more forward facing things that you could do. But advocacy can be all of these other little things as well, if that's where you feel more comfortable. It doesn't take much to write an email or send a letter to your legislator. And written communication in particular, a personalized email, not a form letter. They get a lot of form letters from coalitions and advocacy groups. They'll hand out a script and say, just fill in this information. The more you can personalize your communication, the more likely you are to get a response from them. And then it kind of can build a relationship from there. Meeting with them in their office could be the next step. But if you are interested in being an advocate, which it is important to your profession, there are different ways that you can do it. And that's some of them. Things to remember, just be prepared, be a good source of information. If you don't know the answer to a question you ask, this happens all the time, or a question they ask, it happens all the time, even to us. You just say, that's a great question. I'm not sure, but I will get back to you. That's another bridge to continuing the conversation and building the relationship, is when you need to get back to them with information on something they've asked. Again, personalize your message. If you can share a personal experience or story, that's always really helpful. We like to avoid using jargon, acronyms, terms that are familiar to your profession, but not necessarily to anyone outside the profession. I can't tell you the number of times I've sat at a state board meeting of various kinds and been like Googling what letters mean as I'm sitting there. The same goes if you're in a meeting. Assume, they're not going to know acronyms or, common jargon in your profession. Another thing it's important is to kind of know both sides of your issue. If you're in there advocating for something, know what the opposition might be. And you don't have to frame it negatively, but it always helps to say, I know there might be some people who feel this way about it, but this is why we think this is important. Be polite, ask for a response, and then, always just send a note saying thank you for their time. Because again, that's just another bridge to communication and keeping that relationship developing. How to find your legislator. So this is the state legis website. There's a wealth of information here. But if you're looking to see who your state senator is or your state representative, you also can find your members of Congress here and your U.S. senators. But for our purposes, you're looking for your state senator and your House member. You just type in your address and your county and then enter. It might ask you to prove that you're a human. But then it'll list your legislators for you, and you can click on them and it'll take you to their webpage. And there should be links to their personal websites as well as their social media accounts. But then there's all kinds of other information on their webpage, including the bills that they're sponsoring or co-sponsor memos that they've put out. I think there's some voting statistics on there. So if you want to see how your legislators are voting on behalf of their constituents, that's a great place to start. You'll also find their contact information there as well. How to request a meeting. So if you're interested in reaching out to your legislator to meet with them, whether it's virtually or in person in their district office or in their Harrisburg office. A phone call to the district office is a good place to start. Know your availability. That's probably one of the biggest hurdles we have is, some of our clients want to meet with legislators, but they don't necessarily tell us, well, I really can't do Tuesdays, or, Wednesday, Thursday works better for me. It's easier for the staff to find a spot for you if you know what's going to work for you and what's not. State your name and your ask. I'm a social worker who lives in Representative X's district. Like to meet to discuss two bills that are important to me. Those bills are House Bill 554 and House Bill 1993. Those are the bills that we'll be talking about at LEAD. And then you might be asked to email them, which happens often because it's easier for them to have a written record of your request, and then things don't get lost in the shuffle. But be sure to include your contact information in that follow-up, the easiest way to reach you. And you can always put your availability in there as well. That's really helpful. But that's the nuts and bolts of it. You can call the district office. They might patch you through to the Harrisburg office. Don't be discouraged by getting passed around to one or two other people. They don't always have staff in their offices. They kind of get shuffled around, or they share staff at the Capitol. So just be patient and flexible with the staff as well. Where your meeting will take place. Again, it can be in the district office or the Harrisburg office. The addresses are on their websites, on the Legis site and their personal websites. Double check, because a lot of them have more than one district office. So you want to make sure that you have the correct place before you show up somewhere. It could be virtually, and it could also be a phone call. So any of those options are perfectly fine. And acceptable ways to meet with your legislator. And there's no one that's better than the other. And to start out, if it's the first one you do, you want to, make a request for the thing that's most comfortable for you. Who will you meet with? Your representative is the person you're requesting the meeting with. However, you may also meet with their staff or a combination of the legislator and their staff. We have seen everything from we meet with just the legislator. I just had a meeting yesterday where I fully did not expect the minority leader to show up by himself to a virtual meeting. And I told my client, goodness, I hope it's not him, just him, because my mindset wasn't quite prepared to talk to just him, but I forgot the House was not in session this week. And so there he was. And I said, well, are we waiting for anyone else, Representative? He said, nope, just me. And it was perfectly fine. It was great. He was lovely, very receptive. But, you just always want to be prepared, because even me, sometimes, not always expecting who's going to show up. So it's great if you get your representative. It's great if you get their office staff. And it's great if you get some combination of both. The staff are wonderful, knowledgeable, and they're your direct conduit. Sometimes they pay closer attention than a representative, especially on a busy session day. If you catch them on a 15-minute short meeting on a session day, their attention is in 20 other places. They might have legislation moving. They might have committee meetings. So they are also focusing on all these other things they have to do. So staff really are the people that you want to be kind to, focus on them as well. I always think it's important in a meeting not just to respect the legislator, but their staff as well, because we've seen that where, staff feel as though they're not appreciated as much. They are just as important in this process. So be prepared for any one of those things. And 15 minutes is great. 10 minutes is great. Anything more than that's a bonus. So.
I'll just kind of cover what to expect in a meeting. I know Natalie gave a brief overview of this too. But before the meeting, make sure that you've prepared your key points and anything that you want to share. For the people who are coming to LEAD next week, your NASW-PA office has done a great job of scheduling meetings for you already, and has prepared a really phenomenal booklet that's available online that details the bills that we're going to be talking about. Those include the Social Work Compact Bill, an AI and Mental Health Care Bill, and the bill that would raise minimum wage in Pennsylvania. So you've got kind of a deep dive on each of those. You've got a list of who the prime sponsor is, who the co-sponsors are. So you could look to see, is the person you're meeting with already a co-sponsor of one of those bills? If so, you can say thanks for that. There's FAQs, whole host of materials. Anytime the NASW is asking you to take a direct action to meet with legislators about something, you can expect that they will make sure that you are prepared through a session like this, maybe an online training, a town hall, but always there will also be usually really well done written talking points, materials that you can leave behind or that you can email out or even do posts on social media. NASW-PA does a really great job of making sure that you're educated and feel prepared and supported for any action that they're asking you to take like this. But again, their office prepares the talking points and the materials, so please review them. Please make sure that you're looking at that and that you're comfortable making those points. If you're attending with a colleague or if you're part of a student group that's coming up next week, talk amongst yourselves before you get here. Who's most comfortable talking about the AI and mental health care bill? Who's really comfortable talking about the compact bill? Who has a poignant story to share about minimum wage? Kind of like work that out ahead of time. That way it can kind of flow smoothly in the meeting. Once you're in the meetings, be punctual and polite and be flexible and understand that, especially in Harrisburg on a busy session day like next Tuesday is shaping up to be, that you might also have to be really flexible about your time and flexible about who you're meeting with. And be clear about what you want to discuss. Share personal stories or data. Like I said, if you've got something to share about one of those priority issues, think about it ahead of time, kind of craft that story so you're ready to share it in a meaningful way to support the positions. Thank them for the time at the end of the meeting. Make sure, as Natalie said, you're very likely to be meeting with some staff. Always ask for a business card. If you have a business card, share them. And then always kind of take the business cards of people you meet with. That way, you know who to direct if there's follow-up questions or if, you want to send a thank you afterwards, that you'll have the right person's contact info. Write down any questions or follow-ups that are needed. Like Natalie said, if they ask something and you don't know, just say, that's a great question. Let me check and get back to you. Then that's a natural second point of contact with that office that you can just naturally take advantage of. And then send a thank you note via email. That's easy and it's really appreciated. And it does start to establish kind of a personal connection, even if it's with staff in the office who are, vitally important and keep all the wheels running. One thing that I didn't include here, but I was thinking about as Natalie was talking earlier, if you're not already signed up as for your representative and senators newsletter and social media, those are fantastic kind of entry points into knowing what's happening in state government and knowing what your own representative and senator are working on. I signed up for my personal senator and representative, as well as a couple of others. Like I work in the city of Harrisburg, but I don't live in the city of Harrisburg. So I get newsletters from the representatives that are here in the city as well. Just to kind of know what they're working on, because they're doing stuff in their communities all the time. They're holding events in the community that you may want to take advantage of, or those are great entrees into having casual conversations with them while they're out and about doing work in the community. They have a robust communications departments in the House and Senate, each of those caucuses. They work really, really hard to put out quality newsletters. So, and social media as well. So if you're not already doing that, I'd put a plug in for following your own rep and senator in those places. Next slide. Oh, there's one.
Do we go back one?
Let me go back one, Dan, please. Backwards one. Backwards one. There we go. Roles of attendees. This is kind of formal. You don't have to get this formal in your meetings, but for people, some people like a lot of detail, right? And some people like to be really prepared. So we kind of share this slide for those folks. If you really want to assign roles and give people a job, you can have one person be the facilitator. That's the person who's gonna show up, walk in the door first, have the packet of leave behind, and have, they're gonna open the meeting with, here's who we are, here's who all of us, here's where we came from today. You're gonna say, next up to speak is this person. They're kind of gonna run the meeting. They're gonna give the leave behind materials and kind of make sure everybody's staying on time and on task. So that's the facilitator role. The presenter is kind of the person who explains the purpose, why we're here today. We're here with NASW. We're here to talk about these 3 issues. And then they kind of make the ask too at the end. The person who says, can we count on you to ask your leadership to move this bill? And then you've got a storyteller. Like we said, if you've got somebody in the group who feels more comfortable or has a personally impactful story to share, that's where they come in, so that they can kind of chime in when you're talking, when the presenter's talking. They can kind of say, actually, I'd love to share a story about how that personally impacted me or one of the patients I see. And then a note taker. The note taker, kind of like it says, takes notes. Make sure that attendees give feedback after the meeting. That's really important for NASW-PA to know. If somebody asked a question, if somebody said, well, I've heard that this bill might come up for a vote next week. We'd love to know that. So please make sure that as you're meeting with people, just take notes of any important facts or statements that you're hearing. And that way, sharing those then again with NASW back at the end can kind of make sure that we're all doing the best job we can to support all the initiatives that NASW is working on.
Tips for success. Remember the golden rule. Be polite. Be on time. Be ready for anything. Don't be disappointed. As we noted, if you're meeting with staff, make sure you introduce yourself. Sometimes you get in and someone, sometimes you look around the room and see something that catches your eye and you're able to make a connection. And then you've forgotten to say, my name is, and I'm a social worker or I'm a social work student. So that's always important. It happens. Always be positive, start positively, end with thank you. Keep it brief and on point. It helps, especially if have not a ton of time. Personalize your position. Let them talk. Let them speak. Some legislators are talkers. Some staff are talkers. They want to talk. So make sure you're listening carefully and allow them to speak when they want to speak. Next slide. Stay on topic. Stick to your roles. It's okay to say, I don't know. Don't overstate or exaggerate anything. As we've noted, don't use jargon or acronyms. Don't forget to make the ask. That's a big one. You don't want to get through your whole spiel and say all the important things you've needed to say and then walk out saying, oh, I forgot to ask if they'll support the bill or if they'll ask the leadership to run the bill. Take notes and get your business cards. I think not necessarily on this list is leave your preconceived notions at the door. Politics is political. We all have preconceived notions about these legislators and their staff and the people who work for them. It's best if you can shelve any of that before you walk in the door somewhere. You never know how someone's going to present themselves in these meetings. We've had the most right or left-leaning legislators who you would think would be, not conversational, maybe confrontational, be the kindest, best listeners, right? So if you can leave any ideas you might have about what you think of a person at the door before you go in, it's really helpful. It's just a better meeting overall for everyone. Additionally, some staff are great at this and some don't love this part of their job. Some aren't great talkers. I've been in meetings where the staff said almost nothing. And don't take it personally. Like whatever you do, don't walk out of that meeting and take something they said personally necessarily and then, post it on social media or whatever. It's generally not. It's a tight time frame. It's usually a busy day. And some people are just more personable than others, right? So just take the interaction for what it is and get the best out of it that you can. And don't go into it thinking it should go a certain way or it's going to go this way or it went badly because the staff didn't say more than 5 words to me, right? Or because they talked too much or asked so many questions about something. Just be open to the process in general and keep your expectations, don't have grandiose expectations for how it all should go. And you'll have a much more successful day. Happy to take questions.
I do see one question in the chat says, would you recommend meeting with staff only if they're available and the legislator isn't? Yeah, I think that's absolutely. We see that all the time. And actually sometimes when we're scheduling things, we'll even say staff are fine because
or we just want to meet with them.
Especially if you're trying to meet when they're in Harrisburg or, even in the district, as we kind of approach this busy election season, we're coming up on the primary election in May. And then as the closer we get to November, the candidate themselves might be busy. And staff are fine. Staff are tasked with the job of taking meetings, compiling notes, and informing their boss about what was discussed and, handling any follow-ups that are needed afterwards. So any other questions?
Does anyone have any other questions in terms of you're free to take yourself off mute or put it in the chat either way.
Is someone asking for the links to the resources or one-pagers? Those are all available on NASW-PA's website under the lead link.
Also put the link for the Legis website in the chat here.
The question about when will this meeting be uploaded after we're done and I stop recording, whenever I get the alert from Zoom that it's ready to go, I will have it uploaded onto NASW-PA's YouTube page so you can share it there. All right. Well, if I don't see any other questions, I want to say thank you again to Angie and Natalie for. Oh, we do have one more question. Is it okay to call or write several times on the same issue, or do they keep a log of the call and the request?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit of both. It is okay to make a repeated outreach, but they do keep track of who is calling and writing. So if it's just you and it's just you like every week on the same thing, that might not be as impactful as if it were maybe you and 5 other social workers calling about or emailing or writing about a common issue. But I don't want to discourage outreach or even continued outreach because it is important for our elected officials to hear from their constituents. What I will share is the thing that's most impactful are personal stories. Less helpful are kind of those form letters or, click here to sign petition and email your legislator automatically. Those are okay. And in some cases they work great, but most impactful and most likely to make it through all the filters that they employ to keep spam out would be a personal letter or email. And it doesn't have to be a long one. It can just be, hi, my name is reside in your district. I'm concerned about this. I would love to meet to hear what your thoughts are about this. Here's when I'm available. Or, if you're not requesting a meeting, you can even just say, can you share if, any information about this topic? And again, that'll probably go to staff in the office and you'll probably hear from staff, they'll respond to you. So those are the types of outreach that are that are more likely to get a response.
Yeah, I just want to add, I see that question, our weekly calls or emails for a few weeks, so respectful. Yeah, especially if you're not getting a response, it's as long as you continue to be kind. But I think this is also an opportunity where it's great to pay attention to what's happening. Legislators in the caucuses love X/Twitter, whatever you want to call it. They tweet a lot about what's happening and what they're working on. So if you're not getting a response, do your own research to see what's going on, to see if something's happened and maybe you just didn't catch it. But it is perfectly fine. And I think the nuance is are you getting alerts from NASW to reach out on a specific issue? Or are you just calling weekly to complain about, X, Y, and Z? Or is it something you're deeply personally invested in, a specific problem you're working to solve as a constituent that you want to raise, or in the district that you see? I think that that's okay to be persistent and asking, as long as you continue to be respectful. Just think through, we always say, think through what all the possibilities might be and what all the options are before you take that next step.
I see a question about interested in your perspective on the top legislative goals. Are you asking, is that NASW's legislative goals for this session, or for LEAD, or what?
NASW.
NASW.
Oh, NASW. Okay.
Mhm.
I can share what the topics are for LEAD, which is happening next Tuesday. Top priority is the Social Work Compact legislation. So that's House Bill 544 and the companion Senate Bill 583. Representative Abney's House Bill 544 has been voted out of the House. It's made it through Senate Licensure Committee and is in Senate Appropriations Committee. So if you recall back to our presentation, that's the step before the final vote in the Senate. So we're very hopeful to that we'll get movement on that, hopefully here in the near future. So anyone who's coming to LEAD next week who has a meeting with anyone in the Senate, we're urging them to say, please make sure we get House Bill 554 voted out of, I may have said 544 a minute ago, 554. Make sure we get that out of appropriations and before the Senate floor so we can get that to the governor's desk. Another priority legislation bill that we're highlighting next Tuesday is House Bill 1993, and that is addressing AI in mental health care. And that's an initiative by Representative Melissa Schusterman. And then thirdly, we're supporting Representative Dawkins' bill. Natalie, is it House Bill 1514?
1549.
1549, sorry. Thank you very much.
I have trouble with that one.
Yes, that's the bill that would raise the minimum wage here in Pennsylvania. And like I said, Natalie, thank you for the links in the chat, but there is the LEAD booklet has a full page on each of those. There are sample scripts for conversations with legislators about those bills. There's FAQs, there's summaries, there's pictures of, who's co-sponsoring them, wealth of information there for you to review.
If you're interested in more of the national legislative goals, you can go to NASW's national website. We usually take as a state chapter of the national, we kind of follow their lead usually on legislative priorities for national legislation, but for PA specific stuff, these are the three that we're focusing on next week for LEAD. But if other things come up, we also do send out alerts and things like that to support different things that might have come through. Sarah, if you send me an email, let me put my email in the chat. I can make sure that you get it. It's yeah. So if you have any trouble getting any of the LEAD information that's on the website, feel free to reach out to me, and I can make sure you get that. If you are coming to LEAD, you will get printouts of those. So that you can have your own program that can help you get around the Capitol. but also we'll have one-page flyers as leave behinds that when you're going to visit different legislator offices, that you can leave them with sort of a summary of what we were there supporting, so they have that as something to keep with them. All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today. Again, I want to thank Angie and Natalie for helping lead this session and get us through everything here. We would love to have you at our future lunch and learns that we have every month. So there will be information about the one for April coming up very soon. But other than that, we are excited to put our advocacy into action next Tuesday, and we hope to see you all there if you're coming with us. If not, we hope that you can find ways to advocate in your own way as well. So thanks for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you in the future. Thanks.